Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Martin Luther, the famous theologian who nailed his 95 Theses to the church door, said we're all sinners and saints. But because of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, we're saved and absolved. This is Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt here with Taylor Richard from Heart Hospice. We're going to talk about some present-day sinners and saints.
There's a lot going on right now.
I love that song.
Wonderful.
Mighty Fortress is our God. So the sinner this week are people who formed fraudulent hospice companies in Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Daily Times reported that in 2018, the Department of Public Health in California went to the legislature and asked for legislation to allow third-party organizations to evaluate applications for licenses for hospice companies. Under California Senate Bill 1495, hospices could be evaluated by these third-party providers, and that was to alleviate a backlog of 72 applications. Well, the unintended consequence was that these third-party organizations now had a financial incentive to sign off on as many hospice companies as they could. Here's what Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert Kennedy Jr. had to say to the House Ways and Means Committee.
So now you've got all of these problems, and I'll give you one example. Hospices in Los Angeles. We've shut down 500 of them. We have not gotten one call from a congressperson or one call from a patient. Why? Because those hospices did not exist.
Okay, Taylor, it appears as if the problem of fraudulent hospice companies started when the law allowed hospice startup companies to apply to a third-party vendor instead of California Department of Health. What kind of compliance with Texas regulations does Heart to Heart have that you're aware of?
Absolutely. So we absolutely comply with Medicare and Medicaid guidelines. So those are set forth, of course, by the government and means that we are accepting appropriate patients onto our services. Additionally, in our physical sites, we keep them staffed. We've actually had an inspector at one point in time come up and just make sure we had our correct license on the wall and we are where we say we were because of the concerns that can be seen across the United States as well. And then being a larger organization, we actually work with a very large team at our home office, but including our chief compliance officer and teams that make sure that we are following all of the regulations and doing hospice right. Because with hospice, you don't get a do-over. So if you have patients that have signed up with a hospice that may not truly be real or can't support all the requirements that a hospice is supposed to provide as regulated by the government, the only person that really loses at the end of the day is the patient and their loved ones that should have had access to that appropriate level of care and their hospice benefit.
Yeah, that's really an important distinction. I saw a post on X, formerly known as Twitter, where a lady said that the hospice nurse would come intermittently, and it seemed like that she wasn't getting her bandage changed often enough, that she would only come when more medication was required. And so what should people be asking when evaluating hospice companies? Because I think some people just get a referral from the hospital. What should they ask?
Yes, so there's actually a list of questions that we like to educate families on, because if you have the time to choose a hospice, I always encourage others to choose 2 or 3 that could be fits and interview them and see if the answers align with your goals for hospice. Because while we all are regulated by the same agency, every hospice does it a little bit different. So one thing that you may want to ask is this hospice CHAP accredited? So this is an additional education or accreditation evaluation process that hospices can choose to participate in, and basically says, like, yes, you are operating in an elevated level of care and service and under these regulations to provide appropriate hospice care. You'd also like to ask when they were founded. To me, one big thing, especially with my background being in nonprofit senior living, is are they privately or publicly held? Are the offices franchised out, or do they have one singular home office that the organization works with? You want to ask about the frequency of nursing and care visits. And truth be told, no hospice should be able to give you an exact frequency unless they've done an evaluation or are doing an admission of your loved one, because everything is based upon medical necessity of a patient. We may visit one patient with a nursing visit twice a week, but there may be another patient that needs a nursing visit daily if they're getting close to that end of life period and they need better pain management and things like that. So also asking, how do you determine how to increase or decrease the frequency of our clinical team visits is something very important to ask whenever you are interviewing hospice services. And then potentially, where is your closest office? Because while hospice offices are spread out, because hospice is offered wherever somebody calls home, you want to know if you're going to have a nurse or an aide have a 45-minute response time to you or a 3-hour and 45-minute response time to you if something's going on.
Yeah. So you mentioned this elevated level of accreditation. What was that called again?
Yes, it is. CHAP is the acronym for it. And so you can...
CHAP?
CHAP, yes.
Okay. And the list of questions that you mentioned, do you have that on a handout that you can send out to the listeners?
We do. We absolutely do. And it is pretty much a list of about 20 questions that we recommend people ask when they're interviewing hospices. I'd be glad to share that.
And how can they get that? Who should they call or email to get that?
Yes, y'all can actually message our Facebook page at Heart to Heart Hospice of San Antonio, or you can call us directly at 210-824-4113. That's 210-824-4113.
Okay, great. So as far as the saint goes, who would you like to recognize today as a saint because of the good work that they do?
So it was very hard thinking about this because truly all of our team that works, that I work alongside is incredible, especially our sales and marketing community education representatives, because their goal every day is to bring joy to residents when we're in buildings, but also to bring that education on hospice services to the community and in turn families and patients. But someone that really stands out to me is someone I've had the pleasure of knowing for the last 3 years. Her name is Jade. She's a community education representative with us in the San Antonio area and is also an LVN. So she's been a hospice nurse for over 20 years.
Wow.
Comes from a legacy of hospice nurses with her mom and her grandmother as well.
Never heard that before.
I know. She's incredible. She knew that was why she wanted to get into nursing. But one thing that's really special is whenever she works with any of our patients and she's having that hospice conversation, they've elected hospice services, especially if they are inpatient in the hospital or are going to our hospice house in the medical center to transition through the end of this life, is she keeps an ink pad with her with some small squares of paper. And as long as the family approves, of course, she takes the thumbprints of our patients and creates them into a heart on the paper. And this gesture allows her to create one for as many family members as they need or are going to be there, and helps them have that lasting memento with them. And not only that, but she has set the example for the hospitals and then for others on our team to create these little fingerprint kits where they have a little ink pad, they have these small squares of paper, and they are able to do that whether someone is face-to-face with Jade or whether they just at the hospital know that someone is getting to the end of their life and this would be a special memento for their family to carry on.
How special is that?
Very special.
That's cool. Some people receiving hospice care are unconscious or sleepy from the pain medication. Others are more alert. I'm aware that hospice providers ask about the do not resuscitate question and directive to physicians' documents. Do they ask about other end-of-life, get your affairs in order kind of things?
Very important. So we do try and incorporate that into every single conversation that we have. As far as last will and testament goes, that's not something that we're legally required to ask like we are for medical and durable power of attorney and out-of-hospital DNR. but we actually have a social worker on staff. We have lots on staff, but every patient and their loved ones are assigned a social worker. And so even if we don't learn that from our initial conversation, that is something that our social workers are working with the patients and their loved ones on to make sure that everything is set up for success and for an easy passing for them. I know sometimes the patients have stress if maybe they haven't finished a last will and testament, or they want to make sure that their daughter is going to be taken care of after they pass away. And our social workers can help make sure that our patient does have their affairs in order. If it's something that's appropriate for the social worker to handle, they certainly will. And if it's not, then they will absolutely refer out to local professionals like you.
Okay. So we mentioned hospice nurse, hospice social worker. Who else is part of the team?
So we have an interdisciplinary team, of course, with the nurse and the social worker. We also have CNAs, or our certified nurse aides. They assist with activities of daily living. So hygiene, grooming, showering. Sometimes that looks like a bed bath. Sometimes that looks like freshening up. And sometimes it looks like a full-on shower. We also have a spiritual care coordinator as well. And they're not set with any denomination. So I know in this area, we do work with a lot of Christians. And so we talk about Jesus and God and things like that. But some people may be agnostic or even atheist. And that spiritual care coordinator just helps them work through their feelings about grief and passing and things they may feel that way. We also have a volunteer coordinator that works to assign volunteers for companionship for our patients if they're interested. And then, of course, our hospice medical director that oversees our interdisciplinary team.
Okay. If you're interested in volunteering, call Heart to Heart. What would the number be?
Yes, it is 210-824-4113. We are always looking for volunteers who have a heart for serving others, and you only have to commit a minimum of about 30 minutes per week.
We'll be.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Most families don't realize they have hidden legal blind spots until it's too late. Wills, trusts, Medicaid planning, even protecting a business. These are the kinds of issues attorney Todd Marquardt helps uncover before they become problems. Todd is the host of Talk Law Radio, where each week he guides listeners through the legal challenges families, veterans, and business owners face, while showing them the practical steps to protect what matters most. Catch Talk Law Radio, Saturdays at 11 a.m. on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, 6:30 a.m. The Word, and now in Houston on AM 1070 and 103.3 FM The Answer, or anytime on YouTube. Planning isn't just about documents. It's about peace of mind, security for loved ones, and building a legacy that lasts. Don't wait for a crisis. Do it before you die.